Hey guys, what's up? Welcome back here to today's episode of Intuitive Angling, and man, I really appreciate you guys checking the video out and hanging out with me a little bit. Always very grateful for that. Guys, today we are going to get into like one of the most basic things of bass fishing that is probably the most misunderstood, and people do it wrong. Even good anglers, I see even pro anglers doing wrong on how to set up a Texas rig. So I'm going to show you guys how I rig my Texas rigs from start to finish, knots, weights, everything like that. I'm going to explain to you why a lot of people make a mistake, and how the system that I came up with was, I came up with this even during when I was at the top of my game as a pro back 15 years ago. That just allowed me to land a lot more fish and get more bites. So we're going to get into that in today's video. Also guys, a couple quick housekeeping tips here to keep Intuitive Angling up on YouTube. Just want to invite everybody out there to please check out our Fish the Moment lake map breakdowns. We got those back up on the Fish the Moment website. If you guys are interested in that, I'll put the Fish the Moment link in the description. And these are maps I built for Fish the Moment. We got maps of lakes all over the country, you know, different seasons of the year. It's a really good resource to help your fishing out. And also please check out the summer sales that Tackle Warehouse has on my Tackle Warehouse link I'll put in the description. If you guys want to bookmark and use that link, it's a good way to help the channel also. Really appreciate that. Okay guys, I think one of the things about a Texas rig worm is people think, since it's like bass fishing 101, that they know how to do it and there's only one way to do it. There's not. Based upon how you rig your Texas rig, it creates a different look to the worm, and also it helps your worm work better. And most importantly, when you set the hook on a Texas rig, it helps you land the fish better if you set it up correctly. So I'm going to sort of show you the do's and don'ts on that in today's video. So first of all, I'm talking about Texas rig. You know, you got your Texas rig sinker. The one that my favorite, guys, is Strike King makes this tungsten sinker. This is the one I got. Like, again, I'll link all this stuff in the description. And then for all my Texas rigging, guys, I use the Gamakatsu G-Finesse straight shank worm hook. A straight shank is the best hook for a Texas rig. And I'm going to show you the worm and everything first. But what I want to do before I do that, I want to show you the best knot to tie with it. Because if you're using fluorocarbon line on your Texas rig worms, if you don't tie the right knot, you can break your line on a hook set a lot of times. So the best knots you want to throw or tie for a Texas rig is the double uni knot. Now, a lot of you guys, I've showed this before, and inevitably I'll get some knot critics out there say, Randy, you don't know what you're talking about. That's not a double uni knot. That's a blah, blah, blah. Well, Aaron Martin showed me how to tie this knot over 20 years ago. Aaron calls it the double uni knot. That's good enough for me. So that's just some opinion on that. So anyway, real quick refresher on the double uni knot. You know, just come through twice on your hook. Sort of hard to show you with fluorocarbon. I'll do the best I can here. Come through like that, where you're running it, you know, through your worm. And when you're tying the double uni knot, guys, you have to have some weight on your hook. You can't tie it on just a straight hook, so put a lure on there when you're tying it. And the next thing you do is pinch the two pieces of line together like this. And I should have a dark shirt on here. So you've got, you know, in both fingers, you know, you got your loop and you got your open hand, and then take the loop end and you want to wrap it 3 to 5 times, depending upon the pound test of the line. And then the top on where your fingers are pinched there, see that little loop right there? Take this part of the line and come through that loop with it, just like that. Get up through there, and then when you get that loop through it right there, put it in your teeth and then cinch it down tight with the loose end. I know that's probably hard to see with the fluorocarbon, but if you replay that, you can see it. This is the double uni knot, guys. You got actually 2 tag ends like this. You got your loop end and your open end, and then just take that and clip that off. Another thing about on your knots, guys, when you're clipping it off, make sure you try to clip it pretty short, because if you don't, the knot will also get in the way of your hook. So I like to crimp it pretty short there. But anyway, that double uni knot there, guys, what it does, it allows for maximum shock absorption. So if you tie a Palomar knot or something like that on a Texas rig or a jig, and when you set the hook, a lot of times the way that line lays across the hook eye, you'll break that line with fluorocarbon on a hook set. But the double uni knot, the way it lays, will not do that. So anyway, I got my hook set up there. Now the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to show you guys how to actually hook it and rig it the right way and the wrong way. But first, before you do that, if you do peg your Texas rig here, which sometimes I do, sometimes I don't. If I'm casting it into open water, I usually don't peg it, but if I'm flipping it, pitch it, and thick cover, I do. But if you're pegging it, guys, use a toothpick. The reason you want to use a toothpick is you can control the tension on the slip sinker here. And what you want is you want to put it in there just tight enough to where it holds your slip sinker in place, but it doesn't lock it down. You want the slip sinker to be able to move a little bit. So you don't want it to be real tight, because the reason you want this slip sinker to move and to move easily like that is when that fish jumps, you want that slip sinker to separate away from the hook, because when that slip sinker, there's a deer running across the yard there. When that slip sinker separates from away from the hook, the bass does not have the weight that gives it the leverage to throw the hook. So if the sinker comes away like that and the fish jumps with just the hook, they don't have the leverage to throw and get off. So I do prefer a toothpick. A lot of people use those bobber stops and all that type of deal. I don't like the bobber stop because it just creates more mass on the end of the lead there, just the visual strike detractor. So the next thing, let me show you how not to rig a Texas rig. First of all, when you're rigging a worm or a creature bait, you want to look at the way the bait is laid, and you want to come down the seam of it. So say for example here, this is a Zoom Old Monster, and you'll see, if you look close, there's a seam on it, and that seam is in line with the tail right there. So for example, on a curly tail, you always want to come down the seam. Hold on one second, guys. I got a text. I got to get this. Hey, sorry about that, guys. I got Kim texting me, while I was doing the video. That's the thing about doing these videos. It's like, as soon as I do a video, either a helicopter comes over the house, or there's a train at the bottom of the field by our house here. The train runs across through there, or I get a text from somebody. So anyway, back on there. So anyway, what I'm saying here, guys, is on every worm like this, not necessarily creature baits, you do have a seam that goes down through there, and you want to put the hook in line with the seam on the concave part of the worm here. And when you do that, it'll give the worm a lot better action. So make sure you come across the concave thing. Now, first thing you want to do, there's one mistake when you're rigging that you don't want to do. Number one is you don't want to come through too low in the worm, because this is what's happened. If you come through too low like this, then when you put your hook keeper in there, you've got the hook eye sticking out there, and you don't want this. This is another strike detractor. Can't get the worm to rig straight. And also on the other end of that, you don't want to put that hook in too deep. For example, you don't want to come in, like that much with a worm, because when you come into that much and you pull it down, when you pull it down like that, it's going to have that head's going to come crooked and your worm's not going to be straight. So what you want to do is you want to make sure that you come through just the perfect amount. Rig up here. And in my opinion, the perfect, the perfect amount is about 1/4 of an inch. Just about like that. And with 1/4 of an inch, what that does, that gets your keeper down in there, but it doesn't, get your hook eye coming in. Now the next thing, guys, you don't want, we talked about this before, is you never want to come through this, you never want to put your hook in the center of the worm like that. See the hook is right there in the center of the worm? This right here makes the worm weedless, but it also makes it so weedless, it's going to cost you strikes. If you put that hook in the middle of the worm, depending upon the diameter of the worm, you got a huge amount of plastic to penetrate there. And a lot of times what happens is you'll set the hook on that fish, and you got so much plastic in the hook there that hook never comes through the plastic. And you'll have the fish on for half the fight because the worm is in the fish's mouth and the fish is clamped down on it. But as soon as that fish opens its mouth, that worm just comes out of its mouth because the hook hasn't penetrated. So the things you want to do, sorry guys, got these dang sinus allergies. Thing you want to do is this, and this is the purpose of the straight shank hook. Come in there like this, and then when you put your worm in, you want to come in the side of it. just hook it just through the, see how I just got it in the side? And if you line it up right, just like that, the worm is perfectly straight. And when you set the hook, it breaks off the side of that worm, and you got a really good hook set, you know, without a lot of extra weight that comes on there. And finally, guys, is just take some time and make sure your Texas rig is perfectly straight. I'm a stickler for this. See how perfectly straight this is? You don't want any crook in the head there. You don't want the worm crooked from rigging it wrong. That is the perfect way to rig a plastic worm right there, Texas rig. And also, guys, don't get carried away with too big of a hook. For example, this is a 10.5-inch worm. I've got a 3/0 hook in it. A lot of people get carried away with a big hook, but I can tell you a lot from fishing Texas rigs for, you know, decades and decades. You will land a lot more fish if you go to like what you think is a size too small. Now, I've figured this out just through trial and error and, you know, experiment with a lot of different hook sizes. And there's a couple different reasons for this. The smaller diameter hook, or the smaller hook, has a smaller diameter as far as wire diameter, and smaller wire diameter is easier to penetrate. It's hard to penetrate a large diameter hook, especially when you have it in plastic. So for example, make sure that your worm, when you got your Texas rig, creature bait or whatever, make sure the worm doesn't overpower it. See how this is sort of like the perfect size with it, doesn't stand out too much. And you'll definitely land a lot more fish by just downsizing your hook a little bit. So anyway, guys, that's how I rig a plastic worm, a Texas rig. Another thing that's going to help you out as far as how you set the hook on it, when you get a bite on a plastic worm or Texas rig or anything like that, don't get in this big hurry like you're some live nerve ending and you just got to, you know, reel down and set the hook as quick as you can. This is sort of what I do with it, because I think the fish, you can let the fish run with it and the fish is still not going to swallow it. So this is sort of my deal. I'll cast my worm out there and say I'm working the worm along the bottom like this, and then all of a sudden it's like, I got a strike. I know this is a fish, and you see your line starting to move out with it. You got plenty of time. The fish isn't going to drop it. If it's a fish over 2 pounds, it's not going to drop it. It'll swim for 50 feet if you want to let it. But as soon as you're aware that you have a strike, reel down on it, let the fish move, find the direction that the fish is moving. Say if the fish is moving off to the right like that, let the fish move a little bit, reel down and tighten your line up, and then pull back and reel at the same time. Don't like jack them like that hard. Just let that line go tight and just pull back and reel at the same time. And what's gonna happen is that as you're pulling and reeling, that hook keeps penetrating into the worm. It just does a lot better than setting it on some type of a slack hook set. So anyway, that's the main thing with the guys as far as Texas rigging. And if I could give you guys one tip as far as Texas rigging a worm, is go make sure you put your hook point through the side to the edge of the worm. Never ever put it like that right in the middle of the worm. That's going to cost you a bunch of fish. So anyway, perfect timing, guys. Here comes the train. It's going to start getting loud here. We'll check in later.